At the very beginning of their story, as if at the dawn of a new day, there were Eliza and Mark. Young, ambitious, their hearts beat in unison, filled with dreams and hopes. Eliza, with a brush in her hands, like a magician, created worlds full of colors and emotions on canvas, dreaming of one day opening her own gallery where her art could speak to every viewer. Mark, with drawings under his arm, saw every building as a potential work of art, striving to create not just walls, but spaces that inspire and transform the world. Their romantic story began with an unexpected meeting in a small coffee shop, where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee intertwined with their first glances. The city became their common canvas on which they painted their love. Walks through narrow streets, late-night conversations in cozy parks, spontaneous dates under the starry sky. They shared their plans, supporting each other in every, even the most daring endeavor. They shared their plans, supporting each other in every endeavor, even the most daring. Eliza looked at Mark's sketches with delight, seeing genius in them, and Mark could spend hours admiring Eliza's paintings, finding in them a reflection of her soul. Their world was built on mutual trust and faith in success. The first successes in their careers, however small, only strengthened their confidence in the future. Eliza received positive feedback at an exhibition of young artists, and Mark was invited to an internship at a famous architectural firm. In their cozy apartment, filled with laughter and the aroma of freshly baked buns, there was an atmosphere of love and boundless optimism. They discussed their dreams, made plans for their future together, imagining how one day their names would be heard around the world. It seemed that nothing could mar their happiness. But even in the clearest days, sometimes a slight shadow slips through, a hint that life does not always go according to the planned scenario. A slight uneasiness, like a subtle breeze, began to blow toward their perfect world, foreshadowing the trials that would test their love to the limit. And while they were enjoying the present, clouds were gathering over the horizon, ready to fall on their fragile world. Soon after their dreams seemed to begin to take shape, fate made a change. Mark, with his ambitions as an architect, faced an unexpected blow. Layoffs at the company put him out of a job. It wasn't just a financial setback, it was a blow to his self-esteem, to his confidence in the future. The atmosphere in their cozy apartment, where laughter and inspiration had once reigned, gradually began to change. Eliza, seeing Mark sinking into despondency, tried to support him, but she herself felt the growing pressure. The need to pay the bills, to maintain their shared space, was weighing more and more heavily on her shoulders. The days became increasingly bleak. Less laughter, more silence filled with anxiety. Their conversations, once full of hope and plans, were now increasingly about money, debt, and the uncertainty of the future. The first disagreements, like small cracks in a solid wall, began to show through in their relationship. Mark felt pinched, useless, and his mood became increasingly irritable. He, used to being a pillar, now felt like a burden. Elise, for her part, was thinking more and more about her dream, the gallery she wanted so much to open. But how could she realize it when she had to fight for survival every day, when the boat they shared was leaking? Their love, which had seemed so unshakable, was now being severely tested. Trying to save money, searching for new opportunities, the first quarrels full of bitterness and mutual recriminations. All this was becoming part of their daily routine. Mark, exhausted by his unsuccessful job search, became increasingly apathetic, his confidence melting before his eyes. He felt helpless, unable to secure not only his own future, but theirs as well. Eliza, watching his torment, was torn between the desire to support her lover and the desire not to give up on her own dreams. The clash between their personal ambitions and the harsh financial reality was becoming more and more apparent. This period was full of tension, and it seemed that every day brought new challenges to their relationship. But this was only a prelude to the even more difficult decisions they had to make. Financial burdens, like quicksand, were gradually dragging them both down. What had begun as a temporary hardship now threatened to swallow up everything they had so carefully built. Mark, once a confident architect, now looked more and more like a shadow of himself with each passing day. His shoulders seemed to sink even lower under the weight of unpaid bills and inexorable hopelessness. And now, when the situation seemed to have reached its climax, this chance appeared. a job in another city, far away from their cozy but now so tense apartment. But this opportunity, like a knife, cut their life together into two parts. For Mark, it was a welcome breath of air, a chance to feel needed again, to regain the lost ground beneath their feet. But for Elise, it meant postponing indefinitely her cherished dream of opening her own art gallery. Her paintings, which had once been a source of joy and inspiration, now seemed like silent rebukes of her unfulfilled hopes. The tension in their relationship was growing every day, like a taut string ready to burst. Their conversations, once filled with laughter and plans for the future, were now drenched in pain and mutual misunderstanding. Elise felt that her ambitions and desires were being ignored, that they seemed unimportant in the face of Mark's financial problems. And Mark, for his part, felt misunderstood and unsupported at the most difficult time in his life. Quarrel after quarrel, desperate attempts to shout to each other to be heard, but all in vain. It was as if they were on different sides of a river, and each was painfully watching their love slowly but surely fade under the onslaught of circumstances. Eliza, clutching her brushes in her hands, tried to keep from shivering, caused not only by the cold in the apartment, but also by the fear of losing not only her dream, but also Mark. Mark was staring at the ceiling, listening to her quiet sobs, and his heart was breaking with the powerlessness to change anything. Doubts like poisonous snakes crawled into their souls, eroding their faith in each other and in their shared future. Fear of loss, fear of being alone, fear of not realizing themselves. All of this was intertwined in a tight tangle that seemed impossible to untangle. Their love, once so bright and all-consuming, was now being tested in the most brutal way. And while they were trying to find a way out of this labyrinth, fate was preparing for them another, the most difficult test. And in this test, they had to decide what was more important to them: their love or their ambition. But how to make a choice when everything is at stake? Tension rose like a cloud before a thunderstorm. Unspoken anxiety hung in the air, and every look, every word seemed to probe the bottom of the abyss into which they might fall. Mark was faced with a choice that superseded all previous dreams. A job in another city seemed to be the only salvation from financial ruin. Despair pressed down on him, making him forget what was so dear. Elise, for her part, felt her world, so hard-won of colors and hopes, begin to crumble. Her gallery, her cherished dream, seemed increasingly distant if she followed Mark. An internal dialogue was tearing them apart from the inside out. Mark thought about how he could secure a future, how he could be a man who would not fail. He saw this job as an opportunity to escape the mire of debt, but every step toward that decision resonated with pain in his heart. Elise, on the other hand, could not imagine herself away from her studio, her canvases, the dream that was her heir. She realized that if she left, she would lose a part of herself. But how could she ask Mark to give up his chance? Their conversations became increasingly tense, full of innuendo and resentment. It was as if they were dancing on the edge of a precipice where any wrong move could tear them apart. Mark tried to convince Elise that this was temporary, that they could overcome the difficulties together. But there was uncertainty in his voice and a shadow of fear in his eyes. Elise, for her part, suffered in silence, realizing that her own ambition might be the cause of their separation. In secret from Mark, Elise began selling her paintings, works she had put her soul into, to help him out of a financial hole in some way. It was her way of saying that she wasn't ready to give up, that their love was worth fighting for. When Mark accidentally found out about it, he was shocked. In that moment, he realized the depth of her feelings, her sacrifice and devotion. He saw that their love was not just words, but something more, something worth sacrificing for. It was then, at this turning point, that they both realized that their love is not only passion and romance, but also the ability to support each other, to compromise and overcome difficulties together. Ambition, however important it may seem, was not worth losing each other. They sat down and talked openly, without recriminations or resentment. They searched for a solution that would allow them to stay together, but without completely abandoning their goals. And they found it, a compromise that had seemed impossible only a short time ago. Their embrace was full of warmth and new hope. They realized that together they were capable of many things, even of creating a whole new future. Their story continued on its way, but now with a new realization that the true treasures are not only in external achievements, but also in the depths of their hearts. Their relationship, like a beautiful canvas woven of love and devotion, took on new, even more vivid colors. And now, after a storm of doubts and trials, dawn was breaking on the horizon. Eliza and Mark stood on the threshold of a new chapter of their lives, united not only by love, but also by a common pain from which they had learned an invaluable lesson. The decision to stay in the city, despite the temptation of change and seeming ease, had become their conscious choice. The foundation for the future they were going to build together, brick by brick. Mark, with a new determination in his eyes, plunged into his job search, and his persistence was rewarded. He had found a place where his architectural talents could be fully developed without requiring separation from Elise. It was not just a compromise, but a victory over circumstances, proof that true development is possible within the confines of one's own home if one has someone who believes in you. Elise, in turn, inspired by Mark's support and his belief in her talent, took up her brushes again. Selling her paintings, which had seemed like a sacrifice, turned out to be the impetus for a new creative endeavor. She began to work with even greater passion, putting into her paintings not only skill, but also the depth of her feelings, all the emotions experienced. Her paintings, like a mirror, reflected their journey together, filled with joy, sadness, and, of course, love. They learned to support each other, not only in moments of happiness, but also in those moments when it seemed that the world was collapsing. Their relationship became stronger, like hardened steel, able to withstand any blows of fate. They realized that true love is not only romantic dates and confessions of feelings, but also the ability to compromise, to give a shoulder when necessary, and together to overcome any difficulties. This love grew up with them, becoming more realized and deeper. Their lives were filled with new plans, dreams, and hopes. Mark achieved success at work. His projects became more and more important, but at the same time, he did not forget that the most important thing is his love and family. Elisa, inspired by his success, began to take the first steps towards opening her own gallery. She already imagined how her paintings would adorn the walls and how people would stop to admire her vision of the world. Their romantic moments became even more precious, filled with warmth and tenderness. They made time for walks in the park, for candlelight dinners, for heart-to-heart talks. These were not just moments of relaxation, but moments of togetherness, when they could enjoy each other and their love. They learned to appreciate every minute spent together, realizing that this was true happiness. They were no longer afraid of difficulties, knowing that together they could overcome anything. Their love, having gone through trials, became not just a feeling, but a strong union of two hearts, ready to beat in unison no matter what. But there is another aspect of their story that deserves close attention. And here we come to the end of this story, a love story that blossomed like a delicate flower against the backdrop of difficult life circumstances. Eliza and Mark, having gone through trials, through doubts and fears, found more than just love. They found true devotion to each other. Their path was thorny, studded not only with petals of romance, but also with sharp thorns of financial difficulties, personal ambitions. It seemed ready to separate them. But as we know, true love is not a cloudless sky, it is the ability to hold hands even in a storm. They realized that behind the bright dreams and personal achievements sometimes hides something more important, the opportunity to share their lives with a loved one. True happiness turned out to be not in conquering career peaks, but in overcoming obstacles together, in that invisible but strong thread that bound their hearts together. Eliza and Mark, having gone through quarrels and misunderstandings, learned to hear each other, learned to compromise, realizing that their love is not a competition, but a united tandem. Their story is a reminder that love can be inspiring and empowering, that it can survive any adversity if there is a willingness to support each other. Eliza, with her brushes and paints, and Mark, with his blueprints and plans, found their harmony, not by giving up their aspirations, but by being able to weave them into the unified fabric of their life together. They not only endured, they grew stronger. Their love deeper and more meaningful, like a wine that has matured over time. Their journey is not just a beautiful fairy tale, it is a reality that can inspire each of us. Their story is an example of how love can be a beacon in the darkest of times, how it can help us make the right choices. Looking into the future, where they are together, hand in hand, building a life filled not only with creativity and success, but also with the warmth of their mutual love, leaves hope in my heart. Hope that others, having seen their example, will be able to truly appreciate the power of love and fidelity without being tempted by fleeting ambitions. But as we know, every story has its facets, and there is another aspect that deserves attention.